I want to welcome everybody, and I especially want to thank our colleagues from the North Suburban Chambers of Commerce and all of our collective members for joining us today. We have a lot of people on the call. I've actually officially lost count of how many chambers are on here. We started out with a certain number and it grew. So special shout out to Vicki Street of DBR, Roger Sosa of Evanston, Betsy Bear of Glenview, Carolyn Surf of Highwood, Joanna Rolick of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, Erin Lyons of Lincolnwood, Alicia Burmese of Niles, Tensley Garris of Northbrook, Julie Usum of Wilmette, Kenilworth, and Terry Dason of Winnetka, Northfield. And welcome to anyone else who has jumped on this call from another chamber. So thank you all to my friends and colleagues. We'll keep the agenda simple so we can get to the program. Michael, thanks for giving us the housekeeping guidelines. And if we didn't say this already, the program will be recorded, the slides will be available, and we will be sure to give you Agnes's contact information. So today we have the pleasure of welcoming Agnes Masnik from DCEO, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Agnes is the Northern Stateline Regional Manager for the state of Illinois. Her primary role at DCEO is to help businesses with expansion, retention, or to attract them to Illinois, working with all of DCEO's products and programs. And now her role has expanded, as if she didn't have enough to do, to support the governor's programs based around COVID-19, responding to inquiries, and helping businesses to understand the programs. And that is why we invited her to speak with you today. So without further ado, please welcome Agnes Masnik.
And I will be sharing my screen momentarily to put up her presentation. So let's see if I can do that.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jenny and Michael, or Mike, and the Highland Park Chamber. I appreciate this opportunity, and it's so great that we're able to streamline this and coordinate with the chambers, you know, in Cook and Lake County, and if there's any from any other counties, thank you as well for joining. And I believe Mike is going to be sharing his screen.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Thank you. One second. It kind of. Okay, outstanding. So hopefully you can still hear me.
Mm-hmm.
So Governor Pritzker's Restore Illinois plan is a 5-phase regional approach to reopening our communities and the overall economy in a way that is driven by public health data. Restore Illinois regions are now in the revitalization phase, and what that means is that our communities will contemplate a return to additional recreational and social activities with a carefully developed guidelines to help keep people safe. Next slide. Okay. These guidelines released, they represent a steady process made at containing COVID-19. What phase 4 means in general is gatherings of 50 people or fewer are allowed. Traveling using recommendations from Department of Public Health and CDC guidelines or guidance, greater access to health care, education and childcare open with Department of Public Health guidelines, outdoor recreation, and additional categories. Next slide. Phase 4 allows for the safe reopening of several key business segments such as film, movies, theaters, museums, and zoos, as well as many of your constituents that you serve. That includes indoor dining and restaurants. Phase 4 also creates the capacity limits for health and fitness centers and various outdoor recreational activities while ensuring industries are provided the latest public health guidance to protect the health and safety of employees and your patrons. Phase 4, it marks the key return to key leisure and business segments. And next slide, please. So that's including, like I just mentioned, these museums, zoos, theaters, performing arts centers. I think probably most visibly restaurants and bars, and social activities. And indoor and outdoor recreation has been expanded. Next slide, please. So Department of Commerce has worked closely with the Department of Public Health to develop guidelines for businesses and operations pretty much consistent with public health approval for safe, allowable activities based on our progress made towards overcoming the pandemic. DCEO has maintained an approach of close stakeholder engagement. We did do different focus groups, providing industry leaders from across the entire state, to provide feedback and to really take into account the unique demands of the industries that these or pretty much that the companies and businesses that you serve, but also the business owners that may be on the call as well. And really just to help the businesses, serve your customers. So similar to Phase 3, Department of Commerce has published a wide range of information of resources on our website. It's illinois.gov. Business Guidelines is the website. And this is really to help your individual businesses, venues, operators, just to make sure that you have the most up-to-date safety guidance for your patrons and your staff. Next slide. Oh, okay. Next slide, please. So each of the industries have business toolkits. These kits are on the Department of Commerce website. And, it was really broken down into the segments that we had already mentioned. Along with these toolkits, it really goes into signage, training checklists, and other resources that are pertinent to your specific industry. Next slide, please. Okay. So the various guidelines took in consideration workplace mitigations across 8 areas. And next slide, please. Next slide. And so the goal of how we assembled the guidance, we took, oops, can we go back to there? Thank you. How we took it in consideration, the guide, how we had developed the guidelines, we took into account for the various industries these 6 different key risk factors. So really letting these factors help drive the way that the policies and recommendations were made. So duration, proximity, number of contacts in a specific business, how do you screen, how is the ventilation in a particular area, and really what's the nature of contact, so whether it's employees and or customers. So that's really been how they've approached all the policies that have been put forth. Next slide, please. And like I said, the various guidelines took in consideration workplace mitigations across 8 areas. The top 3 listed on this particular slide is really the same across all. It's addressing general health, HR and travel policies, health monitoring, and consistent. They're pretty much, these 3 are consistent across all the workplaces that we've issued guidance. This provides recommendations for PPE and hand washing and social distancing, and implemented testing and screening. Then if you look at the lower part of the slide, these 5 industries are focused on recommendations that are customized to address a workplace, cleaning, their individual workspaces, staffing protocols, external interactions, and customer interactions for those customer-facing businesses. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know I provided a general overview of what Phase 4 is. I'm sure that we have questions. We're going to save that to the end because we're going to do a brief presentation now on the Business Interruption Grant. So I'll give Mike a moment to load that presentation. Oops. So if we start at the beginning. So I'm really happy, to be presenting on the Business Interruption Grant. I think that many people, this is probably pertinent for many of the businesses that are on this, that are joining this presentation today. All this information is on the Department of Commerce website. We launched the first round of Business Interruption Grants, big, is like, oh, I'm seeing some messages pop up, excuse me. So we launched the first round of these big Business Interruption Grants, providing $60 million to businesses experiencing losses or business interruption as a result to COVID-19 related closures. The first launch is earmarked for $20 million is going to businesses located in a DIA where an area experienced significant property damage or looting due to civil unrest. $20 million is going for bars and restaurants, $10 million for barber shops and salons, and $10 million for fitness centers, excuse me. Next slide, please. The big program is available for up to 3,500 that experienced a limited ability to operate to COVID-19 related closures. This opportunity is for businesses that were not able to operate. We will begin distributing these funds in July, and the total amount program funding will be to at least $540 million in grants to small businesses, and $270 million of these are set aside for child care providers. And this opportunity is as a result of the Federal CARES Act. So we are administering that money that the state has received through these grants. There will be multiple rounds. So if for some reason you were not part of those 4 buckets that I had already mentioned, we will be issuing future rounds. I'm not quite sure what those particular industries will be at the moment. And we do understand that there is a greater need than there are funds, but we do encourage people to apply. So applicants will be selected by a lottery. Next slide, please. And normally all these grants provided by the state need to go through the GATA process. It is our department's intent to get the money out as quickly as possible, and we are working through our intermediaries to help streamline this process. The Federal CARES Act does require a minimum of 30% of these grants to be released to businesses within zip codes that were disproportionately impacted areas. So you'll probably hear me say that DIAs, so that's disproportionately impacted areas. This map and a list of zip codes are located on the Department of Commerce website, and you can search particular addresses that pertain to your business in the toolbar. Next slide, please. I did do a screenshot of what the different DIAs look like on the map. So that first bucket that we mentioned, that 20 million, are going to the severely impacted areas severely impacted DIA areas. And you could see in the left-hand corner, there is a little search bar. So that's where you would put your address to see if they're located in a particular, if your particular address is located there. Next slide, please. So qualifying businesses, like I said, they include, they've experienced a business interruption due to COVID-19. And then really what we want to make sure that the company is registered, if it's required per your particular industry, in good standing with Illinois, the Secretary of State. Priority is being given to businesses that did not receive the federal PPP or EIDL assistance. And again, just to reiterate that we are going to be choosing the recipients by lottery. Next slide. Eligible reimbursable expenses focus on business operations, which include payroll and benefits for retained employees, lease, mortgage, or utility payments, variable costs for goods or services provided, and expenses related for PPE for your employees. Next slide. Okay, so applications are now available on our website. There is a link there. They are in English and in Spanish, and it does link to our partner Accion's website. Right now, they are due July 7th, and that's until the end of the business day. Next slide. Okay, a breakdown of the buckets again for any folks that might have joined a little later. $20 million for businesses located in the DIA, those severe DIA areas. $20 million for bars and restaurants. $10 million for barbershops and salons, and $10 million for fitness centers. And next slide. So eligibility will be limited to businesses with a subset of DIAs that experience significant property damage or looting during the civil unrest in the past. There is two types of way we do break down the DIAs. There's over 160 zip codes in DIA areas, but then the severely impacted areas we've narrowed it down to 40, I believe it's 48 zip codes. Next slide. Businesses with under $3 million in revenue. Oops. Go back. This is the bars and the restaurant one. No, one more slide. Teresa, we'll get to your question at the end. Okay, so if you don't mind going one more forward. There we go. Businesses with so for bars and restaurants, businesses with under $3 million in revenue in 2019 or a prorated amount, if open for less than a year, they must have been, the business must be operating for 3 months prior to March 2020. Only bars and restaurants that did not provide outdoor food and beverage service prior to June 17th will be eligible. 500 of these grants will go to DIAs, and 500 will go to the rest of the state. Next slide, please. And the second bucket, barbershops and salons. There's $10 million a part of this bucket. 1,000 grants, that averages about 1,000 grants. Eligible businesses will be those under 500,000 in revenue in 2019, or prorated amount if in business for less than a year. You must have been operating for 3 months prior to March 2020. And one second. And just to break down the DIAs, 500 of these grants will go to DIAs, and 500 will go to the rest of the state. Next slide, please. And for fitness centers, businesses with under $2 million in revenue in 2019 or prorated amount, if open for less than a year, must have been operating for 3 months prior to March 2020. 150 of these grants will go to DIAs and 350 will go to the entire state. So those breakdowns that I just mentioned are how the lotteries will be picked. Next slide, please. The applications are available now. Initially, we did provide them, we provided a PDF viewable document that allowed businesses to get ready for the posting of the applications. We started accepting applications on June 26th, and the window closes on July 7th for our applications for this first round at the end of the business day at 5 p.m. And we anticipate announcing the awarded recipients in mid-July. Next slide. They are available online through our website, and you do link there. I provided it here. We will make this presentation available. And how I really just get to it is I Google Illinois DCEO, and I go into, if you scroll down the screen, you're easily able to locate the Business Interruption Grants. It's one of our, one of the programs that's on the homepage. Next slide, please. And my email here is available. I know that folks will have questions, just either technical questions or, you know, questions whether it's on phase 4 or if it's on the big grant. Please feel free to reach out to me. I do have some time available this morning to just do some one-on-one responses with people that might and be in follow-up to this webinar. And Ginny or Michael, did you have any last thoughts, or did you want to open it up?
I have nothing to add to that other than to welcome people to ask your questions of Agnes. Please feel free to do that. Put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you.
We do have one so far from Teresa Dason, who asked, does this include the massage therapy industry?
So if for some reason the massage therapy industry was located in the civil and received some type of civil unrest, there was any property damage to the building, if they were in that DIA, severe DIA area, then it would. Otherwise, at the moment, it does not, unfortunately. I see the next question, does it include the educational industry? We are a school of music and arts. I'm at those three different, those 3 buckets that I mentioned in the presentation. It doesn't currently cover that. If for some reason you are in a DIA severe impacted area, please contact me and then we can troubleshoot that. Any questions?
Actually, I have a question, Agnes. You know, we're listening to news from across the country of states and cities and areas that have opened up and then are now rolling back some of the openings, particularly bars and restaurants, outdoor areas, et cetera. What would be the tipping point for Illinois to, you know, hate to look that way, but what would be the rationale to roll back? What would be the situation that would cause that?
Well, you know, I think that the governor's office works along closely with the Department of Public Health, and they look at, you know, the positivity rate and as well as other information, and, you know, and they've outlined the different the thresholds in the phases. So, you know, I think they're monitoring that on a day-to-day basis, and the governor's office has been keeping everyone updated. We anticipate phase 4 will be the longest of all phases. There might be sub-phases within in 4, you know, so providing either, I'm guessing more, I'm going to think positively, you know, like that we're providing more, you know, leniency in the guidance. But, you know, if there's a tipping point, I think the governor will definitely be keeping us apprised of, you know, what the recommendations are from his office.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
So we're a creative agency, we're in an office, and I'm having a tough time getting people motivated to come back to work in the office, even though we've looked through your packet and are following, you know, like have put in place the guidelines that have been recommended, but people are skittish and afraid to come back to the office. And while I don't want to twist arms and force people to come back, being a creative agency, it's hard to not have that collaboration one-on-one and only do it working remotely and having calls like these. Is there any, you know, advice that you could provide about how to encourage people to come back? I mean, businesses are opening up. I see it all happening all around us, yet my staff is just like cocooned at home and won't come out.
Well, Tanya, I totally understand. You know, we've been in this boat, you know, over 100 days. I know that, you know, they stress if staff is able to, you know, work from home to continue to do so. I know myself, you know, I have been out meeting with people. I've gone to openings of new, you know, company openings in the state. I've met with clients. I do take precautions that are recommended. So, you know, I try, you know, not to have, you know, coffee or maybe, you know, just if I'm going to be, you know, eating in public, you know, I just try to take those safety precautions that are in our guidelines. You know, if I'm having a meeting over lunch or, you know, coffee. So, and then I think it's just what we've, you know, been rolled out is that our buildings are at 50% capacity, I believe. And so I can't recommend, you know, how your agency goes about it, but just making sure that your policies are very transparent so that they know how to prepare, you know, how they can take those safety precautions, and then maybe just having some individual conversations with staff of what your expectations are. I know it was hard to go back, but you know, I am feeling more comfortable as the days progress, you know, and just making sure I'm taking those extra precautions with distancing and the protective, you know, masks and hand washing.
Thank you.
So expected round 2, I don't have, there's a question in the chat for what is expected for round 2. I don't know. I do know that, you know, we will keep those, the rounds updated. We either, I'm sure the chamber will be notified from Department of Commerce, and then we'll definitely, we post on our social media website, and we do have subscriber newsletters. So pretty much as soon as I know, that information also gets out to the public. So we'll make sure that we keep continuing to push that information out on future rounds of grants. So future rounds of grants, will they be targeted to help nonprofits? I don't know at the moment. So Martin, happy to connect and just get some feedback from you on, you know, on the need. So thanks for asking the question. Did I miss any? Oh, food trucks. Phoenix Flame, I see your question. I will need to get back to you regarding food trucks. So please email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It's Agnes.Masnik and at illinois.gov. So please feel free to email me and we can schedule a time to talk or connect on your question. Any other questions from the group?
I believe that's all for now then.
I do understand that some questions are very, you know, individual. It's specific to your business. So if this isn't the right forum, please feel free to reach out, and I will do my best to answer your question.
All right, well, thank you so much, Agnes.
Agnes,
you as
thank you
well.
very much. And as Agnes said, if anyone has questions that they feel more comfortable discussing directly with her, please feel free to reach out to her. We will have this recording available on our website and the slides as well. So thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you especially to my colleagues at all of our chambers. I appreciate your partnership.
I definitely appreciate everyone getting the word out. It does make my job easier. So thank you so much for all your questions.
And Ginny, thanks for setting it up.
Yeah,
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
Anytime, you guys, anytime.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Take care.